will make a difference.
Good morning again. I welcome everyone who's here for either the first time or you remember that you're here for a long time. I would invite you, if you would like, to greet your neighbor, but we'll do so with maintaining a little social distance. But just probably say namaste or just good wishes to them with your hand. So we'll light our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, and say in unison the words that are in our order of service.
You want to ask if a kid wants to come up?
Well, I thought that was for the kids.
Allison said no.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah, okay, good. Yeah, just what Steve was just telling me, it would be really wonderful, I'd like to do this, if there is some child or youngster that would like to come up and, okay, can you come up? there you are. He was in waiting. Let us read together. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Let us sing together or hum behind your mask, whatever feels, or just let it tune rise in your heart. Here we have gathered.
Okay, so we have time for all ages. If the little ones can come and sit at the big carpet here, and we're going to have a projector for story today. So you want to look up this way. I'm going to take my mask off so you can hear. However, Alex, should I have a mic for the people at home? Hello? Okay, so here we go. Oh man, it's so good to see all of you here today. We're going to look up this way though. Let me stand up here. And I'm going to set the timer for myself, okay? Because I know what happens. I could spend all morning on this topic. So how many of you in my audience have heard of the Velveteen Rabbit? Okay, and this comes from the would you guys read this with me? When a child loves you, right here, for a long, long time. Read it with me. Not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. What do you think about that? Do you have a toy at home that you love so much that it actually became real? And in our hearts and our minds as a child, we look at those toys and they are so special to us that they feel so real to us, don't they? They feel so real. So we know the story of the little rabbit. What happens to the rabbit in this story? Do you know what happens to the rabbit in the story? Do you know what happens? Anybody know? Go ahead.
He kind of like comes alive and he's not just like a stuffed animal.
Yeah. He's like a real animal to the little boy. So I was thinking about children these days. I bet, Alex, the next slide, I think you guys know these characters. How many of you know these characters? Yeah. You have to look. Gracie, this way. Play. So you know them. Do you play with them a lot at home? On your screen? How many of you play with these characters? A lot. You play with them a lot? During the pandemic, when you were at home from school, did you play with them a lot then too? Yeah. You used to play a lot. Let me ask you this question. Did you play so much with these that they became real? Sort of. You felt like they were real. I talked to a student the other day, 7 hours on video games in one day. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. 7 hours. So do these creatures become real? Like, are they real? Are they like you and me, alive and real? Your head should be doing this. Let me help you. Okay, so I'm really sure your parents have looked at the next slide. And they think that these characters are real. The Star Wars people. How many out there in the audience are Star Wars fans? You think they become real. 7 hours of playing with them. I love the Legos. How many like the Legos? Legos? Right? Yes, right? Love them. They become real. I just got a new set for my birthday. Somebody gave me one. They're so real. Aren't they real? Do they breathe and have feelings and grow? Thank you. No. You're saying the wrong answers, people. No, they don't. But we think that sometimes we get a little confused about what's real and what's fantasy. How much time do I have? Touch the button. Oh, 1 minute. Oh, smokes. All right, let's go to the next one. How about this? Do you guys know what a platypus is? How many of you think this is a real platypus? No. You got it right. Why do you think it's no?
It looks like a rock.
It does look like a rock. When I looked up real and not real, this little animal came up, and believe it or not, it is not a real platypus. The next one is. Is that a real platypus? How many of you say no, it is not? How many say it is, yes, it is a real platypus? No, it's not. And how can I tell that this is not a real platypus? What can I tell?
The bill and the feet both look like they're made out of leather.
Yes.
Its eyes look like it's plastic and it's a duck.
Yeah, it does look like a duck, but platypuses look like ducks. When's the last time you saw a platypus? That's why I like this example. All right, how about the next one? Are these real platypuses? Yes. No, the answer to this one is yes. Shake your head this way. What is it about these two pictures? What are some clues that you see that they're real?
I see those little hairs and
Yes.
the fact that the beak looks kind of moist.
Yes. So we've got the little hair all over his body. We have a moist beak. This is a little syringe from a vet. I want you to look over here. When I was looking at this picture, the clue that gave me, it was a clue that I was like, this is for real. Somebody read this right here. Yeah, the zoo. Are the animals at the zoo real? Yes.
Except for the gift shop.
And a gift shop. That was the other picture.
The giraffes and the elephants in the gift shop are not real.
Yes, that's my 5 minutes, so I get 2 more minutes. Give me 2 more. Okay, let's go to the next slide, because I'm running out of time. What is this? Anybody know what this picture is?
It's COVID. It's COVID.
It's COVID. Is COVID real? Yes. This is the virus. Have you ever seen the virus? No, I mean like put it in your hand and looked at it. You've seen pictures. I've seen pictures. Anybody in the audience seen this for real, but you know that it's real? No one's seen it, but some scientists put them under microscopes. So they know it's real. We know that it's real. It has affected us for 2 years. What about the next slide? What do you know is true about school since the pandemic? What do you know about school since we've been in the pandemic?
It's been not school because we're at home.
We've been at home a lot. We've been at home a lot.
School.
Yeah, what do you know about school these days?
Almost like lots of the kids are wearing masks.
Because that virus is real.
And we're trying to social distance a bit.
We're trying to do what?
Social distance a bit.
Trying to social distance. This is real, people. For 2 years, it's been really real for us, right? For the parents, it's been real. It's been hard. And we have to remember what's real and what's not real during this time, because we might have forgotten what's real.
My school stopped making us have to wear masks like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we don't wear them at my school either, but some of us still do. So when you look at things that are real and not real, you have to think, is this for real or not real? So we look at evidence. Scientists look at evidence. And so I'm going to show you a video. It's a fun video. Check out the evidence. See if it's real. Think about this. Go ahead. Let's see the next one. It didn't work? Are you kidding me? The link doesn't work? That's my timer.
Oh, it's a link.
It's a link.
I can't play it.
You can't play it? Okay. Well, check that out at home. My dad is an alien. It's a great video. You guys, it's a car commercial. But it's really good. Check it out at home. All right, that's your homework. My dad is an alien. Raise your hand if you think your dad's an alien. Yeah, so that's a really good video to look at later, okay? All right, so don't forget, you guys, it's really good. You can look at it on your phone probably. All right, thanks for your time, guys. Look for what's real and what's not real. You got to ask that question. Is this real or not real? Oh, wait. Are we going to get it? No, I think we're done. I think my time's up. Time for Ages is done. So we're going to take our chalice. We're going to sing you guys out of here. Thank you for your assistance. We pretend that we have a real chalice going. Go ahead.
Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
This announcement is real. It's a time for offering. It's a time to give to the work of this fellowship. We give in so many ways, but we do need to think of the material ways as well as all the other ways that we contribute. So it's a time to receive your gift to the fellowship. 50% today's offering will go to the UU Ministry for the Earth, which is a very real and important ministry. Thank you for your giving. Special time in our Sunday service is a chance to recognize and to celebrate and to be with those who are celebrating milestones in their lives. You haven't received a written card from anyone this morning, but I know that there are milestones that are important that are occurring all the time in your lives. And there's one important, significant milestone that was brought to my attention this morning, which is the passing of Ted Byrd, who was a member of this congregation for a very long time. She was here when I've been for a long time, a member myself, and I remember when she was here and her husband, Steve, passed before she did. She leaves 2 children, Owen and Susan, and 4 grandchildren. And we'd like to light a candle, if Steve, you would, for Peg this morning. For the light, Peg, that you gave us for your times here participating in the fellowship, and your artistry, your work with ceramics, and you're starting, as I recall, a haiku society as well. Thanks, Steve. That's good. Yeah. Let's join together in a time of reflection, of prayer, of meditation. In this in-between silence between events in our service, let there be an opening, a place of caring in which we receive what is really real to us. with open arms and an open heart. Trying as we may to cut through the drama, the surrounding myths, the news, which is very real, but also filled with very much that is unreal, so that we can attend to what is most precious to us. People, friends. This morning, we hold Ted Byrd in particular in our hearts. And suffering around the world, in Ukraine, and not just in Ukraine, but in all the other spots of the world whose attention has been diminished by our singular attention on Ukraine. There are all of us worldwide struggling to live a real life, to be honest with facts, even though they may be unpleasant. And from this honesty, learn to live with truth, and with learning to live with truth, learning to live with care and compassion. May this be our mission, to know truth, to be truthful, and to care. Let us be together in just a short moment of quiet. So be it. Amen. Blessed be. Well, I want to share with you a story that's real, that's true. And it's written by a woman named Sarah Miller, who is a writer. And she begins this story by describing the sea level change in Miami, which he says has risen 10 inches since 1900. And in the 2,000 years prior, did not change at all. The consensus among informed observers is that the sea will rise in Miami Beach somewhere between 1 foot and 3 feet by 2050, and by 2100 it probably will be 5 or more, or maybe likely closer to 6, which means that unless you own a yacht and a helicopter, sayonara. Sunset Harbor is expected to fare slightly worse and to do so more quickly. Thus, I felt Sunset Harbor would be a very good place to start to pretending to buy a home. Amazingly, in the face of these incontrovertible facts about climate change, the business of luxury real estate is chugging along just fine. And I wanted you to see the cognitive dissonance up close. Lying is not my favorite thing, but when it is called for, the only thing to do is to jump in with both feet. So I met again with the real estate agent that I'd first rendezvoused. He gestured at the unusual rainy day for this time of year in late March. He said, "Usually at night you will be looking at the best spectacle of a sunset here." He was framed by Biscayne Bay, and it made me think of expensive butter sitting on a blue ceramic dish. I oohed and ahed over the view, quite genuinely, because if you don't think about the fact that it's filled with thousands of pounds of post-hot Pilates crevice poops, Biscayne Bay is breathtaking. I asked how the flooding was. There are pump stations everywhere, and the roads were raised, he said. It's all been fixed. I asked how the hurricanes were. He said that because the hurricanes came up from the tropics, from the south, and this was the west side of Miami Beach, they were not that bad in this neighborhood. Oh, right, I said, as if that made any sense. I asked him if he liked it here. He said, I love it, he said. It's one of the most thriving cities in the country, and it's growing rapidly. He pointed to a row of buildings in a neighborhood called Edgewater that were all just 3 years old. The skyline was raised and built in these last 3 years. Wow, I said, just in the last 3 years, they're not worried about sea level rise? It's definitely something, he said, the city is trying to combat. They're fighting it by raising everything. So far, it hasn't been an issue. I couldn't wait to steal this line, slightly altered. I'm afraid of dying, but so far, it hasn't been an issue. Let us sing a song. The title is When I'm Frightened.
When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me, sing for me quietly? Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me compassion, then I may learn to care as you do. Then I may learn to care. When I am angry, will you still embrace me? When I am thoughtless, will you understand? Will you believe in me, stand by me willingly? Will you share some of your questions with me? If you will show me acceptance, then I may learn to give as you do. Then I may learn to give. When I am troubled, will you listen to me? When I am lonely, will you be my friend? Will you be there for me, comfort me tenderly? Will you share some of your feelings with me? If you will show me commitment, then I may learn to love as you do. Then I may learn to love.
Well, this is our week for celebrating Earth Day, which is actually 50 years old in time. It's an appropriate time, it seems, to spend a moment looking at the state of our Earth, and significantly, more significantly than just looking, to look at the state of consciousness from which we care for this beautiful planet. Many of us are finding ourselves today in a great deal of pain as we confront the Earth and note the increasing devastation from climate change. Global warming was once considered only a remote possibility, but it has become very real to those of us who have lost homes in a fire or a flood. And whether or not we have personally suffered in one way or another, many of us are pained for the Earth and for its creatures today. 40 years ago, experts warned that there was a limited window of opportunity for preventing this change. A notable one was in 2006, Vice President Albert Gore, who in his movie Inconvenient Truth noted then that we had only a few years left to act. But each year since, we have enlarged that window of opportunity because we have found it just too difficult to face it directly, to change our lifestyle, and especially to acknowledge the inadequate consciousness of perspective that has supported where we are. Now, our window of opportunity has about closed. We have crossed tipping points which are creating their own feedback loops, and these are spinning already out of our control. In consequence, then, it's not surprising that many of us are experiencing anxiety, which some psychologists name climate anxiety. It's especially high for millennials who face a lifetime which is going to be more frightening than that of any previous generation. No wonder people like Greta Thunberg have sounded their alarm. Because for the first time in history, we will all face a future which we worry about because it will be downhill. We can feel a little bit like Woody Allen, who pronounced, he said in one of his, I think it was a movie, more than at any other time in history, humankind faces a crossroads. One path leads to despair and utter hopelessness, the other to total extinction. Let's pray we have the wisdom to choose correctly. Some of us may have some of that feeling. But it's important to note that though our anxiety over climate deterioration so vastly differs in degree from the anxiety that species have experienced, the human species has experienced since the demise of the dinosaurs, it is not in any way different in kind from the existential anxiety we suffer all the time whenever we confront the inconvenient truth that everything is impermanent, is changing. This knowledge of impermanence and change deep down makes us anxious. Why not? Because it means that we cannot absolutely control anything. Most of us, me too, find it difficult to accept the reality of limits, which is why I think that the Buddha so compassionately reminded us not to deny limits, impermanence, anicca, as it's called in the ancient language of Pali, for it is the existential reality of our existence. A doctor told me about a teacher he had when he was in med school, and the teacher was talking about the probability of various diseases and disabilities in his class. And one student raised his hand and asked him if he could please list the most prominent causes of death. The teacher paused for just a moment, then pronounced, well, if you look at it that way, the one thing we know for certain is that the leading cause of death is birth. Whatever it may be like in the next world, that is the reality of our own. And we may accept this truth, mightn't we, philosophically, but it is not so easy to consider it personally. I was at a recent meeting of the local funeral society last year, and one of the attendees stood up to question the person who was the speaker, and he asked the speaker, he says, if anything should happen, where should I put my advance directive? And the speaker responded, did I hear you, I want to be sure correctly, say, if? The question, though, in this way of the funeral society member is not surprising, it's not even unnatural, because we live within a cultural consciousness that does not accept the fact of limits as real. Instead, our consciousness deludes us into believing that we will forever be able to modify the world to accommodate to our desires, and that there will always be somewhere a new frontier. This consciousness of hubris permeates our mythology, our theology, philosophy, and psychology. In Judaism, it forms a premise for a promised land of eventual harmony. In Christianity, it buttresses a belief in a future heaven and the return of a future Christ who will make then everything perfect. Enlightened philosophy, which is in many ways helped birth our UU faith, promises the possibility of a future utopia, does it not, where upon earth, not heaven, where everything, though, will finally become just and reasonable. You know, as I think about it, it's almost humorous, if it were not so serious, to realize that it is the very success of this way of thinking, the consciousness that does not admit limits and has deluded us into believing in dominion and control, that we have this capacity, that it is this consciousness that has precipitated the ultimately uncontrollable crisis we face in terms of our climate. You could even go so far as to say that it is our desire to control our climate, and I would like to use the word climate here to refer everything that's around us, our land, our relationships, even inside us, the quality of the food we eat, and in our thoughts too. In this sense of climate, our desire to control all of this, to exercise this kind of dominion, is the incipient cause of our climate crisis. We humans are, in a way, the butt of a very bad practical joke. The consciousness that we accepted, and which deluded us into believing that we could order the world according to our liking, by disavowing the fact of change and disregarding the reality of limits, has forced us to the ultimate limit. Until recent years, acting from this consciousness of unrestricted possibility created very gradual effects, and we did not have to believe that we needed to really question its veracity. But we are now experiencing its karma. Karma is not a mysterious doctrine. It simply refers to the fact that our actions have results. Our habits of thinking lead to habits of behavior, and our habits of behavior add up. As we say in current policies, our intentions have impact. Our consciousness and our behavioral habits, whether they be personal, cultural, or religious, have culminated in climactic impact today. We have reached, as we all know, the carrying capacity of our atmosphere for the containment of CO2 and methane, and set in motion secondary irreversible feedback loops. But we initiated this karma. It began many years ago. For a long time, we pumped oil without respecting the needs and limits of the earth. We've overdrawn, some would even say stolen from the Earth's bank account of fossil fuel without payment. We did not pay for the cost of our overdraft, and we've never proffered reparations. Some saw it coming. 50 years ago, this year, in 1972 it was, business leaders of the world produced a report they entitled The Limits of Growth, in which they predicted there was a growing imbalance between finite resources of the earth and our infinite desires to surpass all limits. And the disparity has steadily accelerated until now the energy use of Bitcoin alone surpasses the total energy use of Sweden. We've just not been able to accept limits, the limits of our cravings, the limits to want more of everything. We've just given ourselves so much license to demand that whatever products we wish should be available, and that we can get them from an ever-inventive technology that profits by supplying them. It's a long, enduring feedback loop of consumerism. And we've created this pernicious loop in which increased supply and profit depends upon increasing the demand. It was acceptance of this cycle that caused officials of the U.S. Treasury Department at the time of the Great Depression to initiate a recovery from the Depression by formulating a greatly expanded use of planned obsolescence. Albert Einstein declared famously that we cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness out of which we created it. I believe that what Einstein said is true. Now, the bad news is that from within the purview of our habituated consciousness, we can't comprehend what a more advanced consciousness would look like because we're covered by our former one. But there's good news. The good news is that we don't have to discern a finished vision. All we have to do is question the accuracy of our former one and realize that it's not built upon reality. Then we can bit by bit begin to release our attachment to it. And as we begin to question the consciousness which has brought us to this point, and experientially in our own lives begin to know what it feels like to liberate ourselves from the influence of this way of thinking, we will discover something marvelous. We will discover a new, wider, deeper, true consciousness that formerly existed only in the background of our minds, but now is emerging into the foreground of our being. This consciousness is beautiful, and it will meet our every desire and need and satisfy the world. But we may well have to begin awakening to this consciousness with mourning. We may need to grieve without shame for the plight of our earth. After all, our tears are created from the same salt water of the ocean that gave us birth. And now we may need to return some of this water back to the sea. We'll need to ask our children to forgive us for exploiting the earth, for acting unjustly to our fellow humans, and for extinguishing the vast proportion of Earth's creatures. It's not that we were evil. It's not that at all. It's just that we were unevolved and we were very ignorant. It's not that we were bad intentioned. We just lost ourselves in a fictional consciousness of unreality and deluded ourselves into believing that somehow greed would bring well-being. We can more conscientiously as individuals begin to monitor our own personal cravings and aversions. I know I have them, I'm pretty sure you do, and begin to moderate our desire to control and to consume. We can increase our ability for accepting, especially the limits that we don't like and don't agree with, and see what emerges out of this acceptance. A new kind of consciousness will happen. We can affirm for our children and our grandchildren the preciousness of their being born at this extraordinary time. Theirs is the opportunity to reverse the karma of a grasping consciousness of generations and emerge into a new consciousness of inclusion and compassion. We can model for them the truth that the purpose of life is not to succeed, which is never fully possible, nor to win all the time, as we believed was absolutely important, nor to even to mold the world to our needs as we foolishly thought we could, but it is to realize compassion and care where there ever is a need. Just as few of us, we would not desert our baby, our parents, or the life of a long loved companion if they were sick and in hospice, so we can lovingly abide by the bedside of earth and all its creatures and provide palliative care as it becomes increasingly stressed. We can love the earth deeply in this moment of transition. The world beseeches us for this love. And the love of this kind is the one thing that is unlimited. In fact, it increases as we spend it. And as we free ourselves from a consciousness of grasping and open to a larger consciousness of respecting reality for what it is, we may well continue our usual activities of our work for social justice, for income equity, for gender identity, for anti-partisanship, and for charity and for peace. But we may aspire in all these efforts from a different place, from a greater depth, one that is accepting of the fact of change and impermanence and inspired by the act of compassion. As environmentalists, I think we may want to carefully reflect upon the degree to which we may be susceptible to slipping into that old consciousness of grasping and control as we attempt to technologically modify and reduce the consequences of climate change through our unquestioned ambition and heroic expertise, technological expertise. You know, what a good community organizer does when he first goes or she goes into a community of need is to sit down with the folks who are in need and listen to where they are coming from, what is on their mind, what are their hurts, and what are the things that they need in their life. In the same way as environmentalists, we need to fully listen not just to our needs, but to the needs of nature. What is called from in the interaction of species and insects and butterflies and bumblebees and the whole interconnected web. And release our sense that we are entering this domain with our sure expertise. Let us dream of a world in which we act for the good of humanity without the need for always reward for our efforts, and without even the need for success, but out of the care and compassion, where we will leave behind in this world more than we take, and we will generously pay for everything that we enjoy. And maybe, maybe just now and then, we may be able to allow a little laugh at our foolishness. That is, find the freedom to laugh a little bit at our own expense, for in truth, we have a very large unused expense account. Having seen our folly, let us free ourselves from attachment to those things that are diminished who we are and the earth itself, and awaken into a new compassionate way of living upon the earth, with its creatures, and with all humans who have the capacity, and we all have it, for a larger consciousness of care and compassion. May it be so. I would like to invite us to read responsibly, if we may, the reading that will be on the screen. And if those of you on your right would read the first lines, and then use on the left, your left, read the lines. It sounds a little complicated, on your right. Connections are made slowly. not happen. More than half a tree is spread out in the soil under your feet. Fight persistently as the creeper that brings down the tree. Grow in the dark and use the sun to make sugar. Live a life you can endure. Make love that is loving. Live as if you like yourself, and it may happen. This is how we're going to live for a long time, not always. Thank you, and let us sing together for the beauty of the earth. We share in reading together the words for extinguishing of our chalice. Maybe from your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. We carry these into our world, and as our celebration